Okay, everybody. I have something really cool to tell you about. If you haven't heard yet about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain here. It's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one single place. Now, the way that you can do this is you got to download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm, and then you can get started. It's really fun. We just switched over recently here at All Too Real 2, and I'm enjoying it so far. So be sure to check it out and let us know what you think. Okay, everybody, welcome to the latest episode of All Too Real 2. My name is Michael E. Cullen II, and with me, as always, is
Matthew. I can't come up with a fake name. All right, Matthew Haas.
That's a weird middle name. Anyways, today on the show we have an All Too interview. This time with Julian Mack, who is a Toledo local activist and hopefully soon politician. He's running for city council, just starting up his campaign. We're got an exclusive interview with him about what he wants to do with his, what he wants to see accomplished in the city. I know this is something different than what we normally do on the show, but I thought it was kind of important to just show that, there are a lot of people in the world that we should shine spotlights on, like Julian. He's a really good guy. There's, creativity in different ways. Normally we're talking about movies and music and whatnot, and but his creativity is really cool, too, when it comes to things such as Black Lives Matter and other things, and we get to talk about all the things that he would like to see done in the city. And even if you're not from Toledo, it's kind of cool to listen to because it basically is, showing how progressive people can be and, changing the world. There was a couple instances here with some audio issues in the interview, so I apologize for that ahead of time. Hopefully it doesn't turn you off. But yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyways, here's my interview with Julian Mack. How you doing tonight with all the craziness in the world and everything?
Not bad, all things considered, right? I keep adding that caveat to it because people talk a lot about mental health and stuff like this, especially recently, and I think it's a good conversation. But, we're living in unprecedented times. We're in the midst of an attempted coup. We're living through a pandemic, and we're living through, another depression. So if all those things combined aren't affecting you at some level, are you really sane?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Are you human?
Right. So all things considered, hanging in there, all things considered. Thanks for asking.
No problem. So just to start, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself, and how you got into like activism and running for city council and all that thing?
Sure. There's a long version and a short version.
Got all the time in the world.
But I'm born in. All right. Well, I'm born and raised in Toledo. I always give credit to that activism, I guess you could say, gene coming from my mother. She was 18, and I think the most influential year of the 20th century, which was 1969, and she helped form like the Black Student Union at BG. And at that point in time, they had a demand where there were only 100 Black students at BG. Right?
Oh, wow.
If you think it back to that time. And they wanted to double Black enrollment, right? That was the simple ask that year. And they did, right? And so kind of from that mold is where I come from, right? But my mom wasn't super radical. She grew up in a really, really small rural town. And my dad is an auto worker and a small business owner. And so, the hardest working man I've ever met, because he works full time at Chrysler and still runs and operates his own business. And so from that, you get me, right? Which is kind of a combination of the two. I remember my first protest. I got involved in, being politically aware or woke, if you call it, at a really young age, right? Like I was in the first grade. I went to First Church of God school, and there was a Nike sign on my shoes, and my mom put tape on top of it and said that we're boycotting them because of the apartheid in South Africa. Right. Yeah. So in the first grade, I learned how to say apartheid. And so it didn't continue at that pace for the rest of my life. But I guess when I started to think a little bit for myself, I was junior high. Right, there was this program Marcy Kaptur had called Youth Democracy Corps, and I grew up in the Reynolds Corner area, which is the same area that Marcy Kaptur's from, and we got to like meet Olympians. I got to meet the president of Poland, right, and other elected leaders, and so from that kind of formative age, a lot of people I feel like are intimidated by elected officials. And elected officials do try to intimidate people, right? This is a real thing. But because I grew up with that kind of lens, I don't look at them like that, right? And, so I started, my first campaign I worked on was for TPS for a school levy when I was like 13. And Jack Ford ran for state rep, I think in 98. And I helped work on that campaign. And kind of the short version is, the longer version is I went to college, was college Democrats president. And like, it was very much in line with like this Clinton-esque moderate Democrat, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's the first Black president, quote unquote, type thing. Right. And then real life hit. I got a DUI for having weed in my car, right? Just for having it in my car.
Yeah. And
then I got another one because I didn't stop smoking weed. And so I had 2 DUIs in like a year and a half period, simply for having weed in my car, right? So like life hit me, right? I got 2 DUIs, had my first daughter, right? And frankly, here's the thing. I couldn't afford an apartment, right? I couldn't afford to pay off the fines. I couldn't get health insurance, right? And frankly, like the lack of being able to really financially support myself and my family felt just demasculating, right? And sent me into this very real depression, you know what I mean? And when I looked at, these people that I had looked up to my whole life to, like, why am I going through this, right? Like, those policies, I realized that some of those policies were why I was struggling, right? And that this isn't right. Something needs to change. And so subsequently, I would also be harassed by law enforcement a lot, right? Like, when you're on probation, it's a totally different world. Like, I didn't get in trouble in school at all. I never had even BIC. Right. And so I wasn't really used to being in trouble, but I would get harassed by law enforcement all the time. Right. I remember even one time I went into a gas station, a Circle K, and they thought me and my friend were going to rob it because we were recording ourselves buying snacks. Right. And so I really thought that, I was going to, at some point, end up a hashtag, right? Like, and I wanted to find some way to try to fight the power without actually fighting. Like, I was mad enough to fight, right? But I guess out of self-preservation, I didn't think that was the best idea. And so I just decided to, one day on my lunch break, after I saw what happened in Ferguson, I started doing exactly what they did and walking with my hands up, on my lunch break, because I couldn't drive to Ferguson, right? And a couple months later, a group called the Community Solidarity Response Network of Toledo ended up forming, and then I didn't have to do that by myself, and it really wasn't by myself. Like, there were other people who would join or record sometimes, but that I did start off by myself. I remember being on the corner by myself, looking to my left, looking to my right, my hands shaking, and being like, you know what? I'm just going to do this because it's something that needs attention brought to it, right? And so that's how I got involved in activism. That's how I got involved in activism, and that was in 2014. And it's a good space to be in life. It comes with its challenges, but also politically, it's the group of people that are influencing the powerful people, I guess, right? Like, and that's an all right spot to be.
Yeah, you want to be on the right side of history.
Exactly.
So what led you to then want to decide to run for city council? So
I actually have always wanted to run for Toledo City Council ever since I was young. But frankly, there were people on city council that that weren't listening, right? There's an infamous incident that I had with a city council person, Councilman Sykes at the time.
Yeah.
Right. Where, kind of to give some background of this story. So Jeff Sessions' Department of Justice was doing what they called the Public Safety Partnership, right? Where they would be monitoring all of these like mid-major kind of, if you're into sports or collegiate sports, like MAC-like cities. So like Toledo, Charlotte, like all these mid-major, Charlotte might be a little on the bigger side, Chattanooga, Tennessee, right? All of these blue places on a political map that were surrounded by red. And I'm like, yo, why are we doing this? And like Toledo City Council has no say in it, has no opinion. Like you all are just ignoring it. Like this is going to dramatically affect poor people and Black and brown folks in our city. Like, how can you have no opinion on it? How can you act like this is not happening? And, you know, he was running for city council at that point in time. And I kept asking him, like, what are you doing for the people? What are you doing for Black people? Because that was kind of the thing that he would throw out there to get votes. I'm like, you're not doing anything. You've been an elected official since I've been 16 years old, right? And I've been following you. And so, like, we kind of had a conflict, and it went nowhere, right? Like, nothing ended up happening. And it became very frustrating, right? Like, you know, I believe in protesting. I think it's cathartic, right? Like, even if you have a lot of pent up energy, but at some point, we have to take power and build power, right? And I feel like there's a large part of Toledo's population that goes unrepresented and unheard, right? And we see that in many of the decisions that they make, right? Like, I've been a part of, so since I've been an activist, let me put it to you this way. I've been a part of 3 citizens initiatives that city council chose not to pass, right? So I've had my name on 3 laws that have been passed and help organize with other people to pass these laws that city council wouldn't touch. That's Sensible Toledo, which is supposed to decriminalize marijuana. Move to Amend, which was supposed to get money out of politics, right? And the Lake Erie Bill of Rights, which is supposed to give rights to Lake Erie to help it fight essentially corporate farms, right, that poison it and create some sort of accountability. And I got to actually go and speak at the United Nations for that. Oh, wow. Right? And so that's all stuff city council could have done, but chose not to do. And then we had to collect thousands of signatures, like over 10,000 signatures as a community to get this passed, and it passed. So, like, at some point you have to say there's a breakdown. The people, they're not listening to the people, and we need to do something about it. And one of the citizens initiatives we're working on right now is a thing to get rid of these red light cameras. Yeah. Right. That nobody likes trying to put on us. Right. And so that's kind of so at some point, right, like, at least for me, kind of being a student of history and being somebody that's watched city council for a long time, like, I want to stop asking and begging for them to do something different and get in there and do something different.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that, Sykes was a very interesting, it is a very interesting character. I used to work at a Blockbuster Video years ago, and he was a customer there. And there was one time, I can't remember what it was, he was telling off one of my coworkers and saying, "Do you know who I am?" and all this other stuff. So I understand. He just seems like an arrogant guy. That's basically all he is. I don't know. Sure. Yeah. That's my only impression of him, like, personally, at least. And I had to step in and basically, I think he had a late fee and he was pissed off about it. And so it was just the stupidest thing. I mean, I'm just like, yeah, nobody cares who you are. You have to pay a late fee just like anybody else. It's the company policy.
And that's the thing, man, is, like, in leadership, there's a Cornel West quote. You can't save people if you don't serve people. Yeah. You know, and so you have to be a servant, right, of the people, and you know, that some people aren't in it for that. Yeah. Right. And it's very clear, and so they need to go. They need to get out of here, man.
Yeah. We need fresh faces like you in there, in my opinion, because you know, new opinions are better than, you know, just people that are in it for the fact that they're of the power or whatever, you know. And I think that goes all the way to the national level, obviously, but it's just, you know, because sadly, most politicians don't really give a shit about the people. They care about themselves and their power, in my opinion.
That's absolutely.
Yeah. What like is the major one thing you would like to see changed in Toledo, if you could?
Well, there's not one. But I will narrow it down to two.
Okay.
So what I call safety reconstruction, right? And it's what you've seen, really the largest uprising in American history for over the summer, right? People are fed up with how policing works in America, and not just policing, but in general, the criminal justice system, all of these systems, right, that don't serve people. We have to, but like before we even get into how we can effectively build, like we have to think about reimagine safety. We have to reimagine safety. And so with I'm a firm believer that our current safety structure is failing. I have family that are police officers and all that, and that doesn't, I think you can be critical of the way the institution functions, and still have respect for the individuals, right, that sacrifice, their time and their life, right, to try to make the community better. But if we have to look at the institution and the way it functions, it's failing, right? It's failing. And police don't respond to crime. The police don't prevent crime; they respond to it. Excuse me. And so, like when there's a conversation, say about defunding the police, right, that's a buzzword. People get scared when you say that, right? Oh no, let's not defund the police, right? But essentially, the whole role of policing has expanded over the past 40 or so years, and we have to, and it's not working. It's not keeping us safer, right? We're right here in Toledo. We're at 54 murders for the year. The record is 60. And we're on pace to probably break that, right? That is indicative of a clear failure, right? So what I would say is that we need to do more to prevent crime from happening in the first place, not just spend more money on responding to crime, right? And I can say this because I've been in that bad headspace, right? Like people who are addicted, people who are depressed, people who are in poverty are willing to do some things that mentally healthy, securely, people who are secure in their resources wouldn't do. And I can tell you because I've been on both sides of the fence. And so, right, how do we really eliminate some of the worst aspects of poverty, right? How do we tackle addiction, right, in a more humane way instead of just throwing somebody in a cage? It's not gonna, you know what I mean? That doesn't really help somebody fight addiction, right? In fact, I would say it exacerbates the circumstances. And I'm going on actually 22 months of sobriety now. I can tell you that from my personal experience, right? Like I was going to jail was the worst thing for my addiction ever. Like the first time I've ever seen anybody actually, we're in the middle of an opioid epidemic. First time I ever saw that opioid was in the Lucas County Jail. You know what I mean? And so, like we have to rethink public safety, right? It's not working. The other thing is our political system is broken.
Yeah.
Right. We're dealing with, yesterday I just saw in Cincinnati, one of the more progressive people that was running for mayor, P.G. Sittenfield, got arrested by the FBI. Right. So that's 3 out of their 9 in Cincinnati city council people. And there's 4 out of the 12 city council people here in Toledo.
But it doesn't stop there,
No.
right? The Speaker of the Ohio House, right, was involved in a corruption scandal. And we're not talking about a couple $1,000s. We're talking about $1 billion bailout with First Energy. You know what I mean? And
Wow.
he personally got like 60 some million, right? And that was spread throughout all of Ohio. And then, you know, I'm not even going to get into the Trump theatrics and everything that corrupt with that, right? Like, that's well documented. People can watch that on the news, right?
Yeah.
But so I think what that shows, though, is that there's a broken system, right? And that we have money drowning out the voices of people like me and you. Elections should not be about who can raise the most money, right? Like that's I've worked some terrible jobs in my life. One of them was as a bill collector, right? I'm not running for office to be a glorified bill collector and raise money, right? And fundraiser. I'm running to actually impact and affect people's lives. Elections and public service should be about the best ideas and who can help the community the most, not who can raise the most money. And right now it's not set up like that. And that's why people, I think, more and more are turning away and becoming apathetic to politics. Is they're like, it doesn't matter. It does matter.
Yeah.
But the system is designed to keep regular working folks like me and you to minimize our voices because we don't come from a lot of wealth. You know what I mean? And that has to change, right? That fundamentally breaks down what makes this country work effectively. Right. And so getting money out of politics and safety reconstruction are my two biggest pieces.
Yeah, I think the whole apathy thing is just sad. There's a guy I work with, I said something to him about something vaguely political, and he's just like, I don't give a crap about politics at all. He's like, I don't care, he didn't even know that Donald Trump was married. Like, that's how little he knows about politics. I mean, that's just a simple little thing. I mean, it has nothing to do with the actual political aspects of it, but he knows so little about politicians that he didn't even know our president had a wife. And it's just kind of sad when stuff like, I just didn't think people like that actually existed who didn't pay attention, but that's maybe because I paid attention most of my life. I mean, I was very conservative as a kid, sadly, but then as I got older, I became very progressive. So it's like, I probably over the last, 20 years or so, I became more progressive than I was when I was a kid because I grew up in a Republican household. But and
that's okay. Like at some point we do that. Like we grew up in a moderate Democrat household, right?
Mm-hmm.
That where Clinton was cool because he could play the sax. I grew up playing the saxophone, right? Like partially because of Clinton, right? And I got most musical in my class, right? Like this was a huge part. But now, like I can't stand. I make a direct connection. Now I just see as an adult the direct connection between, Reagan, the war on drugs, funded by Reagan, increased conceptually came up with by Reagan, right? Funded by Bill Clinton. Like, let's call it what it is, right? Like, what impacted my life was the war on drugs, which was a war on brown and black people, specifically and disproportionately, like with weed, right? Like, let's keep it all the way funky here, and so. The irony is that we're seeing it is as a, legalized throughout our lifetimes. And, it worked as a modern day Jim Crow. Mm-hmm. Right. And so, I think it's fine. Like we all grow up with these preconceived notions of politics based on the framing of our parents.
Yeah.
And that's cool. And the thing I encourage that's fine, like we all do. But now, like there's the interesting thing we got here, because it's the internet has democratized information.
Yeah.
Right. And so anything you want to know, you can find out about it. But I think that we have to be careful at verifying what is legitimate, good information, right? Because not everything on the internet, as I think is true, right? I think I saw on the internet, Abraham Lincoln said that, right? Like, so
he did, didn't he?
Of course. All right. And so we're in this really weird moment politically where, like, we don't know, are these social media sites gonna start fact checking politicians? Twitter, yes. Facebook, no. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's a democracy can only work as well as the citizens are informed, right? And so if folks aren't, and as well as people participate in it, you know what I mean? And so we're in a really interesting time right now, and I don't know how it's going to shake out, brother. I don't know.
Who knows? Yeah, it's just so scary. I mean, the whole idea of the political landscape. Anyways, hopefully we end up with a different president. But I mean, sadly, I mean, I'm not a big fan of Biden either, but still, he's better than what we have, which is good, because I just think the whole political system is the whole two-party system is what is wrong with this country, in my opinion. And I'm not saying that we should have more parties or we should have less parties, but the thing is, it's the problem that, like, if the Republicans had a great idea or the Democrats had a great idea, the other side is going to disagree with it just because they didn't come up with it. It's so stupid.
Right.
And I don't know.
Like, for example, Obamacare is a Republican idea that came Omni in Massachusetts, right? Like, that you would think a lot of Republicans would agree on.
Yeah.
But because the partisan, give you another plug on one of the things that we're kind of working in the time. So maybe hopefully this interview will age well. But ranked choice voting, right? So ranked choice voting is one of the things that we're going to try to introduce in Ohio in the next couple years, where you rank your choices 1 through 5, right?
Yeah.
Whoever wins has to get at least 50% of the vote, right? So that wasn't your first choice or second choice. We're not red and blue, right? There's shades of purple, there's dark red, there's dark navy blue, there's light blue. You know what I mean? And our elections aren't capturing an accurate picture of our electorate and our beliefs. You know what I mean? And so we're getting, we're just getting red or blue, right? When our opinions are far more diverse than that. And right now we don't have the political mechanism to express those beliefs electorally, right? And so hopefully, so ranked choice voting is one of the tools that can create that to happen. Getting money out of politics in publicly funded elections is another thing. And then also ending gerrymandering, right? And having fair districts regardless. Because right now we have these districts where, it doesn't, like the guy who's running, Nick Robando ran against Bob Latta for Congress. He's Bob Latta's dad was a congressman. And this is for the space of BG, right? Yeah. And west of that, all the way up to South Toledo.
Yeah.
Right. And so his district covers 14 counties, bro.
Wow.
14 counties, right? And there's no way that anybody, and he was a good candidate, right? Like he's around our age. But there was no way that anybody else can reasonably win that, And so these, some of these politicians are functioning like monarchies, right? I love Marcy Kaptur, but she's had that seat longer than I've been alive, and I'm 36.
Yeah.
Like there's this, right? Like I'm not a spring chicken. You know what I mean? She's had that seat almost 40 years.
I know.
So like
people are under, like, I get frustrated when I hear like some of my political friends get upset at people who become apathetic. No, I understand why folks are apathetic, and I get it. But we need people in the system that change what is frustrating people with the political system, and that's what I hope to do. And that's the kind of agent of change that I hope to be. If I'm lucky enough to get elected.
I agree with you. I think the ranked choice voting is the way to go too, because I never even knew about it until about a year ago, and I heard this podcast where they were talking about it and how Australia does that and how well it works there. They also basically almost make it mandatory that you vote in Australia. So, I mean, I'm not saying we should necessarily make it mandatory that everybody votes, but it wouldn't be a bad thing. And they also their election days are national holidays. You know,
some of this stuff isn't that complicated, right? Like,
no,
you should have to opt out to vote, not opt in.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like, you should automatically be registered to vote. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? To tell me the government doesn't know where you live, know your address.
Yeah,
they know these things. It should be automatic. Now, if for religious beliefs or something like that, if you don't vote, fine.
Yeah, it's understandable.
Opt out. Yeah, it's simple. Just opt out. But, you know, all of this work that goes into voter registration is ridiculous. Like, one of the things my girlfriend did this year was she registered people to vote at the jail, which was actually a really cool project.
Yeah.
People don't know that they can vote even in jail. You can vote if you have a felony. The only time, at least in Ohio, you can't vote is if you're currently serving time for your felony, right? So other than that, you can vote, but you have to, you know, there are people who don't want you to vote. They know, I think they know how folks, I mean, let's not dance around it, right? When this country was founded, you had to own property to vote, right?
Yeah.
And it had to be a white man, right? Like, and if you didn't fit in one of the, you know, in those categories, you couldn't vote.
Yeah.
Right? And so the challenge of us as a people in this nation, we have this wonderful ideal of America, but we've yet to actualize that for all of us here, right? It's never been true. Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness has never been true for anybody for everybody here in America, right? And so it's a wonderful thought. It's a wonderful aspiration, you know, but it just hasn't been true. So the question is how do we make the founders' ideals, right? Because they were flawed men as well, very flawed men, but they got some things right. How do we make that apply to everybody? You know what I mean? And so that is the challenge that every generation has had to take up. You know what I mean? And I view this activist work, or even view this, you know, if I'm lucky enough to serve on city council, I view that as just doing what somebody has to do. That work of this generation, I think I'm qualified to and should.
Yeah.
We have to do all we can to push the paradigm forward as much as we can while we're here.
So to get on the topic of my podcast, I'm just going to ask you, what do you think is like probably the best like political movie ever made? Just to kind of just ask, you know, just your opinion on that.
Oh, wow. Oh my gosh. I actually love I love documentaries.
Yeah, me too.
Right? Like I'm always trying to learn more. Right. And oh man, I wish I would have prepared for this question a little more.
Oh, that's fine. Sorry.
I don't have a favorite. I can't pick a favorite.
now. But there are some really good ones that are worth checking out. Yeah. There's a new one on HBO called Agents of Chaos. All right, I think is fantastic. Right. Fact of the matter is, and I'm not a tin hat guy. Right. Like I'll look at the stuff that people say, oh, 9/11 is a conspiracy, but I look at it very subjectively, right? Like, but here's a fact, right? Is we are in the middle of a third world war, right? But it is cyber. It's being fought online. And like many of us just don't know it and don't realize what's going on around us, right? And this was actually started, and this is what the movie is about. I'm not going to spoil the whole thing, but essentially, if you remember back in like 2009, Iran and I think it was North Korea kept trying to shoot off nuclear weapons, right? And they kept messing up. Well, that was because the United States hacked their system, right? And they basically hacked their computers and they were messing them up on purpose. That was the first time that had ever been done from one country to another. Yeah. Right. And so once you kind of open that door, now other countries start hacking other countries, right? Like as a way to destabilize what is normal. Okay. So like we know for a fact that this also happened in the 2016 election, right, with misinformation, right? So like one of the things, and it's not one side, right? So like it's not just Tea Party propaganda. There was also like Black Lives Matter propaganda, right? Trying to convince folks not to vote, right? Or to be apathetic and to not participate in the system. And this was done by Russian troll farms, right? Yeah. This is not, so like this is a real thing. And so so like I even when we think about what is happening now, and let me localize it, on the first day of school here in Toledo Public Schools system was hacked. Wow. Right? Like and so because the way that these attacks work is they're not shutting down the entire electrical grid. Right? Because if that happened, boom, you shoot a nuke, right? we that's serious, right? We go to war for that. But what if you just hack a public school system, you know what I mean? And they shut down for a day. Well, that doesn't necessarily warrant a full military comeback, right? And so there are these like soft, if you remember, this also happened with the movie, what was that movie with Seth Rogen and Kim Jong-il?
The Interview?
Yeah, The Interview. Yeah. Remember right before that movie came out, like all of the
Sony hack. Yeah.
Sony hack, yeah. Right. Like this is being done by governments, but it's like, okay, well, if you hack the United States government, well, that's an act of war. But if you hack Sony, right, and just release their emails, well, we might not respond to that, you know? Yeah. And so like that's what we're really that's like a really relevant thing that I think we should all be aware of, that we don't realize what's going on around us and how important the currency of information and legitimate information is that we deal with right now.
That was a good answer. Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to say before I let you go here? Or where people can reach you or anything?
Yeah. One, I mean, you got to have me on again. I will. I really like this. Yeah. You know what I mean? Please, everybody, I'm running a people-funded campaign. Right now, I don't know if I'm running with a party or not, right? Because I want to be for the people, right? And not. I've been around parties enough to know some of them will try to stifle or smolder your voice. So I need help, and unfortunately, I am trying to change the way that elections are funded. But right now, they're not changed.
Yeah.
So if you can go to macforus.com, right? You can donate as little as $1. I think you can donate up to like 500 or 1,000 if you want to, right?
Yeah.
But you can donate, and I do need your help. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Facebook at Golden Rule Mac. I would really appreciate it. And send me a message. I do message back. I believe in that interaction. And you know, if you want to talk to me, I'm accessible.
Awesome.
So that's it.
Yeah. And I'll definitely link all that stuff in the show notes of the episode and everything, so people can find you. And yeah, we will for sure have you on again sometime soon, before the election happens or anything like that. Whenever you want to, just let us know. And
all right. Hey, thank you very much for everything you do. And you know, all power to the people.
Okay, that was my interview with Julian Mack. Good interview there. Lots of insight and a lot of things. We did talk a little bit about movies and things after we towards the end there, so hopefully that'll satisfy our listeners here.
You know, who come to us, you know, with our normal irreverent, I can't say it right now.
irreverent.
There we go. Take on pop culture, you know, subjects.
Yes. Yeah. What's going on in your life here, Matt?
Not much, really. Just, you know, just not going out a lot, just taking it easy, trying to be safe, all that stuff.
That is good and smart.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, hope everybody enjoyed that interview. If you have any questions or anything for any of us, and you want to know more about Julian Mack, there'll be some links in the show notes. Just I recommend getting active in your local community. You know, it's where it all starts, and if you want to see any kind of change in the world.
Yep.
So until next time, folks. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to All Too Real 2 podcast, a Cullen Park production. Produced and edited by Michael E. Cullen II. Music by Matthew Hawes. Subscribe and share the show. Visit us at cullenpark.com.